I come to Red Lantern Diner each morning like clockwork. Corner booth, east window, same chipped mug of coffee. Folks don't look much anymore. Maybe they never did. Just a worn-out man in a windbreaker and steel-toed boots, hunched over yesterday's paper. That morning, sunlight fell soft on the glass, warm enough to lull me into a light doze. It was the laughter that woke me, not the sound, but the heat. Scalding tea splashed down the back of my neck. I shot upright, spine snapping straight as muscle memory kicked in. The booth creaked beneath me. My hands curled halfway into fists before I saw him. Blonde, mid-20s, athletic, smiling like he was posing for a yearbook. He held the empty mug by the handle, dangling it like a toy. His voice curled with mockery. "This ain't a nursing home, Gramps." Laughter broke out behind him. Two other boys, young, red-faced, with the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no, chuckled over their half-eaten pancakes. I reached for a napkin. My collar clung to my neck, soaked through and steaming. The pain was already settling into a dull throb. My shoulders stiffened, but I didn't speak. Not yet. Behind the counter, the waitress, young, tired, blinked and looked away. The cook turned his back. Nobody said a word. The boy, Evan, I'd later learn, took a bow. "Welcome to Diner Theater, featuring Grandpa Snooze," he said to the room. The other booths stayed quiet. One man folded his paper. Another stirred his eggs. This wasn't the first time I'd been treated like background, but it was the first time someone used heat to wake me. I picked up the wet napkin and pressed it to my skin. It didn't help much. My hands shook. Not from rage. Not yet. From the shock of it. Not the tea, but the cold silence that followed. That kind of quiet is worse than the burn, worse than the boy's grin. I joined the army in the spring of '74. I was 18 and too proud to admit I had nowhere else to go. Fourth in my family to enlist. My grandfather fought in France. My father froze through Korea. My older brother never came home from Vietnam. They called it service back then, like it was something borrowed you gave back better than you found it. I don't know if that's true, but I signed the line anyway. Basic was brutal, but I was stubborn. I had hands built for labor and a spine that didn't break easy. By 22, I was a rescue medic attached to a rapid response unit. We were stationed out of Bagram Airfield, halfway between dust and hell. It was 2002. Afghanistan. One mission sticks. A Black Hawk went down west of Gardez. Mechanical failure, they said, though we all knew the Taliban had been watching that corridor for weeks. We were the first response unit sent in. No support, minimal intel. They just dropped us in and hoped for the best. I remember the smoke first. Thick, black, curling like fingers over the ridgeline. Then came the heat, searing, choking. I crawled into that wreckage on all fours, dragging two men out by their gear straps, one of them screaming so loud I thought it was coming from inside my own skull. Then I saw her, a civilian contractor, half-pinned under a broken panel. Her legs were crushed, fire licking the edge of her flak vest. I pulled her free, my hands burning through the gloves. She didn't make it. Bled out on the flight back. But the other 5 did. That's what they wrote on the medal citation. 2 bronze stars. 1 purple scar that still stretches across my left thigh. They mailed me a plaque a month later. Said I'd done exceptionally courageous work under enemy fire. I kept it in the closet. I came home limping. Nerve damage in my leg. Night sweats. A tremor in my left hand that wouldn't stop. I woke up every hour, dreaming of fire and screaming rotors. Sometimes I'd wake on the floor, teeth clenched, the sheets wet from sweat. My wife tried to help at first. She really did. But sleep was rare. And when it came, it was worse. I'd mutter things I couldn't remember, punch at shadows. I once woke up with my hands wrapped around her wrist. Not tight, but enough to scare her. That was the end of us. She left, took the cat, left the dishes. I didn't blame her. I raised our son Marcus alone. Got a job at the foundry. Long nights, loud hours, enough to keep the mind too tired for memory. I walked him to school in the mornings when I could. Bought his first baseball glove. Taught him how to tape his wrists when he broke his finger and wouldn't stop crying. He grew up faster than I could catch. Took work in a warehouse out by Joplin. Same hands as me. Same stubbornness. 3 years back, a pallet fell from a loading dock. Marcus was underneath. Crushed his pelvis and lower spine. He walks with a brace now, only when he can bear it. I help cover my grandson's school bills with what I make on the floor. Overtime mostly. I don't take sick days. Don't get them anyway. I stopped going to the VA. Too many forms. Too many walls. They sent me a letter once that said my case had been closed. Status inactive. Like a file in a drawer. I come to Red Lantern now because it's quiet. The coffee's cheap, and the windows face east. I watch the sun rise between the cracks in the sidewalk, the light hitting that diner floor like a gift no one notices. I don't ask for much. But that morning, Evan Barker didn't see an old man in a booth. He saw a prop, something disposable, and no one told him otherwise. The diner was old and quiet, like most things left behind in Springfield. Red Lantern had seen better years. Cracked linoleum, stools that swiveled uneven, a jukebox that hadn't worked since the Obama years. I didn't come for the atmosphere. I came because they let me sit without question. Corner booth, window to the parking lot. The same waitress, Sandra, used to bring my coffee without asking. Just a nod, then a chipped mug with the handle turned my way. She never asked about the limp or the way I folded the sugar packet twice before tearing it. Routine is the only thing that makes time pass cleanly. Then Sandra left. Moved to Florida, I think. Her mother was sick. The new girl, Rachel, looked like she hadn't slept in days. Always tapping at her phone, eyes glazed with indifference. First week she forgot the sugar. Second week she stopped making eye contact. By the third, she called me, sir, with the kind of voice that turns courtesy into warning. That morning, she brought food I hadn't ordered. A gray slab of eggs. Toast that crumbled before you could bite it. From the back stock, she mumbled to the cook. He looked up briefly, but said nothing. Just went back to scraping the grill. She slid the plate onto my table without meeting my eye. Matches the guest, she added under her breath. I said nothing. Just stirred the coffee, let the eggs cool. I wasn't hungry anyway. I hadn't been in weeks. It didn't stop there. 2 days later, I saw a couple, early 30s, office clothes, glare at me when I shuffled past their table. The man leaned over and whispered something that made the woman cover her mouth. Laughter. Then he looked straight at me. Didn't know this was a shelter. That one got a few chuckles from the counter. Even the cook smirked. I didn't look up. Just kept walking. Boots heavy from the shift I just finished. 12 hours pouring steel in a room hotter than hell and louder than memory. My legs ached, my back throbbed, but I still showed up the next morning. Booth, window, coffee. Evan Barker started showing up around that time. I didn't know his name at first, just recognized the voice. Loud, confident, the kind of voice that doesn't ask, it declares. He was the son of Councilman Barker. That much I learned from the waitress one morning when he slapped her backside and she muttered something about untouchable. He came in with friends, 2 regulars, always laughing, always loud. They liked to talk about sports, politics, things they didn't understand but spoke about like they wrote the books themselves. Then Evan noticed me dozing. He said my snore sounded like a dying goat. Got a laugh. Next time he snapped a picture of me. I caught the flash too late. He showed it to his friends. One of them said, looks like he's already dead. That's when I started sitting deeper in the booth. Face turned from the room. I kept the mug close, hand wrapped tight like it might fall if I let go. It didn't matter. Evan had found his target. When he dumped that tea down my neck, it wasn't about me. Not really. It was about what I represented to him. Weakness. Irrelevance. A reminder that time passes and someday, if he's lucky enough to survive it, he might look like me. The mug he used still sat on the table. Empty. No one moved to clean it. No one told him off. The manager was on break. Rachel walked by, saw the scene, blinked once, and kept walking. The booth stayed silent. The clatter of forks. The buzz of the overhead fan. Evan stood there, grinning. Didn't know this was a retirement home, he said to the room. Another laugh. Another victory. The burn on my neck had already started to fade by then, but something else stayed, deeper. A rawness I hadn't felt since the night the VA called and said my case had been marked, administratively resolved, which meant forgot, ignored. I sat there, soaked and silent, looking at the tea dripping onto the floor. It wasn't the scald that stung. It was the approval, the permission, the quiet nods from people who should have known better. People who turned their heads and kept eating. That's when I noticed her, across the room. A woman I'd seen before but never spoken to. Reading glasses. Hair like smoke. A quiet presence at the bar, always leaving before the second cup. She rose, picked up her purse, walked over like she was stepping through fog. She didn't speak to Evan, didn't glare or accuse. She handed me a napkin. Dry, clean. Army? She asked, voice gentle. I nodded, couldn't manage words. She nodded once more, then pulled out her phone. Not for a picture, but for a call. She didn't introduce herself, didn't ask questions, just placed the napkin into my hand like she was returning something I'd dropped. Army? She asked again, softer this time. I nodded, didn't trust my throat to hold steady. She didn't say, thank you for your service. Just nodded once, lips tight, and stepped back like she'd said all that needed saying. Then came the phone. Black, worn at the edges. She opened her contacts and scrolled with a finger that moved with purpose. Take this, she said, sliding her own dry napkin across the table. Hold it against the skin. It'll blister if it sets. I obeyed without thinking. Her tone wasn't maternal. It was practiced, the voice of someone who had spent too many years dealing with damage. Her name was Paula Reyes. I'd later learn. Used to be a VA caseworker. 22 years of files, appeals, and late-night suicide calls. Now she worked part-time at the county library, shelving books no one read and running workshops for kids whose parents didn't show up. She had that kind of quiet gravity, the kind you don't notice until it moves. She stepped aside and put the phone to her ear. She didn't raise her voice, didn't explain the scene in dramatic detail, just said 2 names and an address. Red Lantern. Walter Greene. Yes, it's him. He's here. It just happened. She paused. Listen. Then, thank you. She hung up and looked back at me. No smile, just a calm, steady presence. Help's coming, she said. I didn't ask what kind. I didn't need to. Her eyes said enough. Across the room, Evan was still smirking, still holding court with his buddies. One of them mimed snoring into a plate of eggs. The waitress finally came back with a rag. She glanced at my soaked collar, wiped the table lazily, and didn't meet my eye. No one had said a thing to Evan, but the air had shifted just slightly. A few patrons had started whispering, and then the bell rang. Not the chime of a coffee refill or the ding of a kitchen timer. The front door. 2 figures stepped inside. First came a tall man in uniform, county sheriff, broad-shouldered, barrel-chested, moved like a man who didn't waste steps. A badge on his chest, silver hair at the temples. Daniel McMillan. Behind him, a leaner figure, civilian clothes, pressed slacks, eyes sharp as razors. His bearing gave him away before he said a word. Retired colonel. You don't lose that spine. His name was Thomas Blake. They didn't shout, didn't scan the room like enforcers. They walked straight to me. Blake stopped at the edge of the booth and looked me in the eye. Walter Greene? He asked. I nodded. He drew a breath and gave the smallest, cleanest salute I'd seen in years. I returned it without thinking. My hand shook, but I held it long enough to meet his eyes. Blake dropped his arm. I never got the chance to thank you, he said. Kandahar, 2003. Humvee fire. You dragged me out. They said I wasn't going to make it. His voice wavered for just a second. I made it. Thanks to you. You could have heard a pin drop. Across the room, Evan froze mid-sentence. Blake turned. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, voice rising just enough to command the room without raising. This man sitting here is Staff Sergeant Walter Greene. In 2003, he saved the lives of 5 soldiers during a rescue mission under active mortar fire. He received 2 Bronze Stars. He served 20 years in the U.S. Army. The diner was dead silent. Someone poured hot tea on him today while he was sleeping. Thought he was being funny. That man's name is Evan Barker. Evan's face drained. The sheriff stepped forward. Councilman Barker, he said flat, your father has been notified. Evan stammered something, hands half lifted like a schoolboy caught cheating. It was a joke, he said. Just messing around. Sheriff McMillan didn't flinch. You're under arrest for assault. Handcuffs clicked loud in the silence. One of Evan's friends tried to argue. The sheriff didn't even look at him. As they led him out, I saw Paula still standing by the bar. She didn't smile. She didn't look proud, just relieved. Blake turned back to me. I run the state's Veterans Liaison office now, he said. We need a man like you. I blinked. What for? He shrugged. Help folks like you. Like us. You've seen the system. You know what's broken. You know what's worth saving. I looked down at my cough. The surface had gone still again. You don't owe me anything, I said. That's where you're wrong, he said. Paula stepped closer. You showed up for everyone else, Walter, let someone show up for you. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. Sometimes that's all you can do. The sheriff's cruiser rolled out of the parking lot with Evan Barker slumped in the back, his eyes wild with disbelief. I watched through the window, steam still rising faintly from my shirt collar. He didn't look like a boy anymore, just small, like a man who'd lived his whole life without consequence, suddenly introduced to the weight of it. Blake stayed beside me. I want to show you something, he said. He pulled a folded envelope from his coat and set it on the table. It bore the seal of the Missouri Department of Veterans Affairs. You've been on our radar for a while, he added. I kept seeing your name pop up in old reports. VA claims unresolved. Emergency room admittances. Always working. Always quiet. I wondered what happened to you. He tapped the envelope. This is a formal offer. Veteran liaison position. Pays decent. Flexible hours. You'd help file paperwork. Walk guys through claims. Visit hospitals. Nothing fancy. I looked at him, skeptical. I haven't been in an office in 20 years. You won't be in an office, he said. You'll be in places like this. He gestured around the diner. Places where folks like us get ignored. I looked down. My hands were still wrapped around the mug. What made you come today? I asked. He glanced at Paula. She stood with her arms folded, watching quietly. She called, he said. Didn't scream, didn't rant, just said your name. And I remember. He paused, then added, some debts don't expire. The diner was still half full. No one had moved. Even Rachel, the waitress, stood near the soda fountain, suddenly quiet. Then the front door opened again. A man in a suit stepped inside. Tall, trim, looked uncomfortable in the diner's worn light. Councilman Barker. He didn't speak at first, just looked around, taking in the silence, the stillness. Then his eyes found me. He hesitated. Sergeant Greene, he said. I didn't answer. Not to him. He shifted awkwardly. I didn't know what my son did. I can't excuse it. He paused. I'm sorry. The words felt rehearsed. I didn't reply. Just looked at him. He turned to Blake. I trust the matter is being handled appropriately. Blake didn't answer either. The councilman looked back at me. If there's anything I can do. There is, I said quietly. Leave. He blinked. I beg your pardon. You heard me. He opened his mouth like he might argue, but something in my face stopped him. He turned and walked out. The door clicked softly behind him. Blake looked at me, then smiled. Not why, just enough. You're hired, he said. That afternoon, the owner of Red Lantern came by. Small man, nervous, said he'd been away on family business. Apologized profusely. Promised it would never happen again. Said the booth was mine, free of charge. They were installing a plaque, reserved for those who serve. I said nothing, but I nodded. 2 weeks later, the wall beside the booth bore a new mural, painted by a group of local high schoolers under Paula's guidance. Faces of veterans from the county, young and old, men and women, black and white, living and gone. My face was there, too, off to the side, not central, just present. The food changed, better ingredients, hotter plates. No more, from the back stock. Rachel left, got replaced by a man named George, former Navy. Quiet, respectful, knew how to fold a flag and pour a real cup of coffee. I started getting visits. Men who'd sat silent in the corners for years. A woman who hadn't spoken about her husband's PTSD since 1999. A boy whose grandfather still cried in his sleep. They came, they talked. Sometimes they just sat beside me. Blake sent paperwork. I helped them file. Got some their overdue benefits. Wrote letters. Made calls. I started carrying a notepad in my pocket. The foundry let me go, but I didn't mind. I was too old for 12-hour shifts anyway. My grandson started visiting more. Said he wanted to understand why the mural mattered. I told him it didn't matter if it didn't make us better. He said, you made me better, Grandpa. That was enough. The town changed slowly. The way rust turns to patina, not polished, just honest. Red Lantern Diner reopened a week after the mural was finished. The booth where I used to sit, the one where the sunlight first touched the window, had been redone. They sanded the wood smooth, replaced the cracked vinyl, added a soft cushion. Mounted above the booth was a small plaque carved into oak, reserved for those who serve. No ceremony, no press, just there one morning like it had always belonged. They let me drink for free, not just coffee, tea too, though I haven't touched it since that morning. Every so often, Someone offers to buy me breakfast. I don't say no anymore. I just nod. It's not about the food. It's about being seen. Word spread. Paula helped file a formal complaint with the city. The police report on Evan Barker went through. Assault. Public harassment. There was no trial. His father arranged a plea to keep it quiet, but the arrest stuck. The councilman declined to run again the following term. At the community center, they opened a small veterans resource table. Nothing fancy. A folding desk, a few pamphlets, a phone line. I stop by every Tuesday and Thursday to help anyone who comes in. Sometimes nobody does. I sit and sort paperwork. Read. Wait. Other times, a line wraps the hall. Blake visits once a month. Checks on the numbers. Asks if I need anything. He calls me Sarge now. I never asked him to. One afternoon, he brought a photographer from the state. They wanted to document the mural. Get stories. I let them take my picture, but I made them include everyone else. I'm not the story, I told them. No, Blake said, but you're the thread. The mural sparked something. Other shops started asking questions. Why hadn't they honored their own? Who else had slipped through the cracks? At the library, Paula organized a memorial board. Photos of veterans who had passed, local names, forgotten names. She put up a sign. Bring us their faces. We will remember. The town responded. Pictures came in shoeboxes, envelopes, printouts from faded scanners. One day someone brought a purple heart in a glass case. He wouldn't want it gathering dust, they said. Put it where someone will ask. That wall now covers the east wing of the library. They call it the Hall of Quiet Honor. They keep the lights dim on purpose. The mural outside the diner became a kind of landmark. Students visit on field trips. Sometimes I stand nearby, watching them trace the outlines with their fingers. They ask questions. Did you know him? They say. Yeah, I tell them. I knew all of them. Not every story ends well. Some of the people I help don't make it through the paperwork. Some don't want help. Some just sit across from me and say nothing. But I show up. I answer the phone. I shake their hands. That's enough sometimes. Rachel, the old waitress, came back one day, said she wanted to apologize, brought flowers. I didn't know what to say. I told her the coffee was better now. She smiled and cried at the same time. Evan Barker never came back to the diner. Last I heard, he moved out west, trying to start over. I hope he does. I hope he learns what it feels like to be invisible, just long enough to see through someone else's eyes. Some days are quiet. I sit in my booth, sip coffee, and look out the window. Same light, same corner. But now there's a feeling of place. Not just presence, belonging. A few months ago, my grandson brought his sketchbook. Drew a picture of me sitting in the booth. You look peaceful, he said. Like you're guarding something. I asked what. He said, I don't know, but it feels safe when you're here. The mural outside has begun to fade in places. Wind and rain have dulled the edges, but the faces are still there, watching, witnessing, a reminder that silence isn't the same as forgetting. That stillness can speak louder than noise. The town holds a small ceremony now each Veterans Day. No fireworks, no speeches, just candles lit beneath the mural. Names read aloud. Slowly. I'm usually asked to light the first one. I do it every year, not because I want to be seen, but because some of the names never got a candle the first time around, and someone has to remember them. I still come in each morning. Same time, same seat. The coffee's hotter now, served in a ceramic cup marked with my name. Staff Sergeant Greene. It's not about the title. It's about the gesture that someone took the time to remember. The mug sits heavy in my hand, warm enough to remind me that the day's just begun. Outside, the wind rattles the street signs. Inside, it's quiet, comfortable. Some mornings, people nod. Some stop to ask questions. Others just sit across from me and breathe. The old instincts don't go away. I still scan exits. Still watch the hands of every stranger who walks through the door. But now, the tension's softer. Not gone, just quieted. Every so often, someone walks in who looks like I used to, worn boots, tired eyes, carrying something they don't know how to name. Those are the ones I talk to. I don't offer advice, just presence. Sometimes, that's the beginning. Each week, we help another veteran get housing. Another claim gets approved. Another kid finds their grandfather's name in the mural and touches it like it's holy. I sign grant forms now, community support for veterans' families, medical transport, job training. Not flashy, just necessary. I use the same pen every time. The one Marcus gave me after I got the liaison role. He said, "You've spent your life pulling people out of wreckage. Maybe now you get to help them rebuild." I didn't know how to answer, so I just started. People think heroism is loud, medals, speeches, salutes. But the strongest acts I've known were quiet. A woman sliding a napkin across a table. A sheriff walking through a diner door. A boy reaching into his sketchbook to draw something worth remembering. Some things break in us and stay broken. But dignity, that can be rebuilt. And when it is, it holds stronger than anything that came before. You just have to see it. You just have to start.